Hello students, welcome to Exam Companion. Today we will study Chapter 1 of Civics textbook for class 7 students. The name of the chapter is Equality in Indian Democracy. So students, what is a democracy? Democracy simply means rule by the people. In a democracy, people have the right to choose their government. India is the world's most populous democracy. How do we choose our government? We vote, right? So let's see a story. On an election day, rich or poor, boy or girl, everyone has to stand in a queue to cast their vote. Similarly, Kanta and her friend Sujata are standing in a queue. When Kanta brings up the point that how they can all cast their vote as equals in India, to which Sujata agrees by saying yes. Why did Kanta said so? Because she saw her employer or boss, Jain Sahab, standing in the queue as well. Kanta is a house help. Now, this further proves that in India, which is a democratic country, everyone has equal right to choose their government. When Kanta went in to cast her vote, she said to herself that she will vote for the person who will bring pipe water to her area. Now students, fortunately, a lot of you must feel that this is very obvious or pipe water reaches every area because that is the case with your area. But actually, a lot of areas do not have water connection in every home. Moving forward, while going back to her home, Kanta tells Sujata that Gudiya, who is Kanta's daughter, has been running fever and that she has to take her to the hospital. As I told you, Gudiya is Kanta's daughter. But first, Kanta will have to finish work at Sahab's home and ask for some advance money. When Kanta reaches her home, she gives medicine to her daughter Gudiya and tells her that she will take her to the hospital after work. When Kanta leaves her home for work, she sees that the basti is never clean. It's always dirty. Maybe that's why her daughter often falls ill. So, on reaching the home of her employers, she asks Jain Madam for advance. Jain Madam gives her advance but asks her not to make it a habit. So after getting the advance money, Kanta takes her daughter to the hospital where she has to stand in a long queue again. Students, at this point, let's understand Kanta's condition. Her daughter Gudiya is ill. She can't take off because she has to ask for advance and her work has tired her. After all this, she has to stand in a queue to get to the doctor. Now, this makes Kanta sad and this makes her think if she is actually equal or if it's just the right to vote. Because she thinks that Jain Madam and Sahab may stand in a queue to vote, but they never have to do it when their children are sick. We will discuss more on this later in the chapter. Now, we will study about universal adult franchise. It is also called universal suffrage. In a democratic country, all adults have one vote, irrespective of their wealth, religion, and gender. So, all adults, rich or poor, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jain, or Sikh, male or female, are all equal and have only one vote. Now students, as we have seen throughout the story, that how Kanta's economic and living conditions are far from equal. Every democracy makes efforts and reforms to treat its citizens as equals. But that does not mean that there is no inequality in a democracy. Let's see how. We've seen how the wealth, working conditions, and living conditions of Kanta are in contrast to that of her employers. Also, one of the more common forms of inequality in Indian society is the caste system. It's commonly seen that especially in matrimonials. Matrimonials are the ads that you see in newspapers for marriages. In matrimonials, even the educated boys and girls prefer to marry in their own caste. Now, you've already read about Dalits in class 6th. Dalit is a term used by so called lower caste people to address themselves. Dalit means broken. By using this word, lower castes are pointing that how in the past they were discriminated against, and this even happens today in some parts of India. Speaking of Dalits, now we will study about Mr. Om Prakash Valmiki, who was a famous Dalit writer and poet. Mr. Valmiki was born in 1950 and mostly known for his book Juthan. Let's see a short incident that Om Prakash Valmiki has written in his book. In his book, Mr. Valmiki mentions that how in his school he was made to sit on the floor away from other students. Sometimes students used to beat him up for no reason. Next, he mentions one incident from when he was in class 4th. He was asked to sweep the playground by his headmaster. Now, this is very surprising because you must not have ever seen one of your batchmates cleaning a playground. But Mr. Valmiki was asked to do that because he was from a lower caste. Now, while cleaning the playground, dust had gone inside Mr. Valmiki's mouth. His back started to ache because the playground was too big for him. He was sweeping while his batchmates were studying. His headmaster, batchmates, and teachers all saw the spectacle, but none of them said a word against it, due to which his self respect was hurt. He was made to sweep the school playground and the school for a couple of more days, and this only stopped when his father saw him doing this and raised objection. Students, this story showcases that how just because Mr. Om Prakash Valmiki was born in a different family, he had to suffer all this. Although this incident took place almost 60 years back and things have changed for good now. Students, now we will see a story based on an incident that happened in one of India's larger cities. This story is about Mr. and Mrs. Ansari. Ansaris were looking for a house. They had the money, so paying rent was no problem. So since they wanted a house, so they went to a property dealer. The property dealer showed them a house. The Ansaris liked it. However, when the landlady got to know their names, she made an excuse that she cannot give her house to someone who ate meat, and that all the residents in the building were vegetarian, which was not true because property dealer and Ansaris could smell fish being cooked in the neighborhood. Now, this same excuse was repeated in the second and third house as well. Seeing this, the property dealer advised them to change their name and call themselves Mr. and Mrs. Kumar. But Ansaris refused, and they finally got a house after a months long search. Students, please note that the landlady did not want to give Ansaris the house because of their religion. Not giving someone your house on rent because they eat meat is not wrong. That is your personal choice. There is nothing wrong in it. But discriminating against someone on the basis of religion is wrong, and which was the case here. Moving forward, let's see what dignity means. Dignity means self-respect. When people are treated unequally, their dignity or self-respect is hurt or violated. Both Ansaris and Om Prakash Valmiki were treated unequally on the basis of religion and caste. Every religion, caste, and gender deserves equal respect. Now, we will see about equality in Indian democracy. The Indian Constitution recognizes every person as equal. How? As you already know that every adult has only one vote. But is that it? Is that the only way in which equality is served? No. Let's see some other ways by which the Indian Constitution recognizes every person as equal. Every person has to obey the same laws, be it a high ranking officer or a labor. No person can be discriminated against on the basis of religion, race, caste, or gender. Racial discrimination means discrimination on the basis of skin color. The bad practice of untouchability has been abolished or prohibited. In earlier times, some people didn't used to touch people of lower castes. This practice has been stopped now. And finally, every person has access to all public places such as playgrounds, hotels, shopping malls, roads, and hospitals. Now, students, you must be thinking that the government of a democracy wants equality and implements it. But how? So, the two ways in which a government guarantees equality in its constitution are through laws and through government programs. Now, students, there are many laws in the Indian Constitution that protects the right to equality. One of them is the popular Article 15. Article 15 prohibits discrimination on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. It also states that no citizen can be stopped from using public shops, hospitals, and hotels. But this article also provides government the freedom that if necessary, government can make special provisions for children and women or for upliftment of socially backward classes. Now, there are various policies that the Indian government has implemented over the years. Most popular among them is the midday meal scheme. Now, what is a midday meal? Midday meal is a freshly cooked lunch served to children in government schools. The meal must have 300 calories of energy and 8 to 12 grams of protein, and it must be provided for at least 200 working days a year. So, students, this makes sure that the meal is nutritious and the students are getting a meal for majority of the school days. Tamil Nadu was the first Indian state to implement the midday meal scheme. In 2001, Supreme Court of India asked all the state governments to implement this program in their school. Now, you must be thinking, why serving lunch to students is such a big issue, right? Why is there a whole scheme dedicated to it? Because students, a lot of children used to attend schools with an empty stomach due to poverty. And a student cannot focus when his stomach is empty. So, let's study the objectives of this scheme. To avoid classroom hunger, as we have just discussed. To increase school attendance. But how? Imagine if you were promised that you will be given your favorite mobile phone or your favorite game to play in the school. Naturally, you will want to attend the school, right? But students, for the poor children, it's not about mobile phones or games. It's about the food. So, poor students who can't even feed themselves, whose parents are so poor that they can't even feed them properly. So, when midday meal scheme started, a lot of parents started sending their children to school so that at least their children can get a wholesome meal. Next, to address malnutrition, as we have just discussed, that some children cannot afford a proper meal, due to which they do not get nutritious food. So, midday meal solves that problem as well. Midday meal scheme has also broken caste barriers and empowered women. But how? By employing Dalit women to cook food. So, since the women are Dalit, so it's breaking the caste barrier. And since women are cooking the food, so it's also empowering them. Students, I hope this is clear to you. Now, students, after hearing the stories of House Help Kanta, Dalit writer Om Prakash Valmiki, and the Ansaris, you must be thinking, is India the only democratic country where struggle for equality exists? Let me ask you another question. When I say developed country or rich country, which country comes to your mind? A lot of you must have thought about USA, right? But even a developed country like USA, which has been a democracy for a long time, is not a perfect democracy. Students, we will use the upcoming term African Americans a lot. So let's understand what is an African American. African Americans are the Americans whose ancestors were slaves who were brought into America in 16th century, and they are also called black Americans. So in 16th century some people were brought into America as slaves from Africa, and over the years their descendants are called African Americans because now they are living in America but their ancestors are from Africa, hence the name African Americans. Alabama is a state in USA, like Maharashtra is a state in India, and Montgomery is the capital city of Alabama. For example, Mumbai is the capital city of Maharashtra. So, in 1955, in Montgomery, African Americans had to sit at the back half of the buses. The front half was reserved for white Americans. And if the bus was full, then African Americans had to get up from their seat if a white person wished to sit. So, white citizens could sit in the back half of the bus as well, but African Americans were not allowed to sit in the front half. So, for instance, if the front half of the bus was full and say a white American citizen was standing, then what used to happen was the driver used to ask African Americans to give up their seat and the white person used to sit in his or her place. Now students, it's clear that how African Americans were discriminated against. But something, an act of defiance, changed American history. On December 1, 1955, an African American, Rosa Parks, was going back home from her work through a bus. So slowly, the front half of the bus started to fill. The front half is where the white citizens used to sit. So at one point, there was no space for white citizens. So the driver of the bus asked Rosa Parks and three other African American citizens to give up their seats. The other three obeyed, but Rosa Parks did not. This refusal or act of defiance became history. Now, students, generally people think that Rosa Parks did not give up her seat because she was physically tired after her work. But she was tired mentally. She was tired of the discrimination. She was tired of the inequality. She was tired of giving in. Her act of defiance led to the famous Montgomery bus boycott, during which African American citizens in Montgomery, Alabama, stopped using the buses as a sign of protest. This protest lasted for over a year. But this act of Rosa Parks, this act of defiance, also acted as a catalyst or a boost for the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement began in USA in 1950s. It was started by African American people to end discrimination on the basis of skin color and to demand equal rights. As a result, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, according to which no person in USA can be discriminated on the basis of skin color, that is race or national origin. Also, African American children could attend any school, that is, all schools were open to them. This means that there were no schools that gave admissions only to white Americans. Also, according to this act, employers cannot discriminate on the basis of gender, race, or religion. Students, no country is completely democratic, but majority of the democratic countries try to push for equality and equal rights. So students, with that we have completed the chapter 1 of civics textbook. Please like and share this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I will see you in the next video.